whenever you see a teammate go down like that, and then he's such a pivotal player with everything else going on from last Sunday's game, that had to be difficult to manage emotionally. Honestly, AJ, did you think about that? I thought about that a lot. Like, man, this is going to be a tough thing to manage for McDaniel, who seemed to be broken up about it as well. And how could he not be? He's a fucking human, it seems like.
Yeah, they all do. Like, it was all of it, and I'm sure it hit the players too as it happened. And the fingers thing, when they showed how his fingers were all, that's what I think everyone remembers and will always remember from that whole situation. But I think the players sitting there, they knew, like, okay, it's probably not his neck. You know, normally when that happens, it's hard to come back as if you think a guy might be paralyzed. That's when it's like, hey, man, how are we supposed to go run our skulls into each other 3 seconds after you cart this guy off of here? I think.
Hey, AJ, it's because it's like an immediate reminder of what can happen in a football game, right? For you guys, not for me, but it's like an immediate reminder, like, oh, that can happen in a football game. And it's hard to just mental hurdle that, I think, for some people. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And then, you know, next play, they may be running lead right at you. And that fullback is 260 pounds coming downhill. And I'm like, geez. All right. Yeah. So you're right. I said before, like, short memory, I guess. But with that one, I guess with Tua, it probably was even scarier because they probably knew, like, yeah, his neck is probably okay. We're not worried too much about him being paralyzed, even though they strapped him down. But they were probably like, man, what was that? Like, I haven't seen it. He was down for so long. Obviously, what happened 4 or 5 days before that in the other game, I'm sure that crept into their brains as well. And it's just like a lasting thing. I don't know. Let's see whenever Tua comes out and speaks to the public what he's going to say. I don't know.
He's going to have to clear up a lot of things, I think. And it's a shame that Tua, who won through that, is going to be asked about everything. But he's a pretty pivotal part in this entire, and let's dive into it, this entire conversation that has taken place immediately upon seeing that very scary injury for Tua. I mean, I got like almost sick. I don't know Tua at all, but it's like you see that happen to an up-and-coming star in the NFL, a man who's finally getting a real opportunity with a coach that is empowering him, a team that seems to be loaded, a system he understands and making his life better, and now he's a guy for an undefeated team. It's just like all those things get added into it, compounded into it, where it's like, man, we are all bummed for Tua. Okay, we're all scared for Tua. I just think like the immediate reaction of people to say that the NFL forced him to play, or there was some sort of malpractice from the independent doctor and from the Miami Dolphins doctors and medical staff and McDaniel. I understand where they're coming from. Okay, I completely understand because I saw the same thing you saw whenever we were at the Colts game watching, and I was shown the clip of what happened to Tua. Literally same reaction that we have for anybody that gets knocked. It's like, oh, fuck, like hope he's okay. You know what I mean? Like, and then we hear he comes back in. We were all alarmed. I think the entire world was very alarmed. But I think what we've been talking about all week about that particular situation, and then last night happens and it spotlights it yet again, the amount with the Miami Dolphins being investigated right now, right, for what happened with the Tom Brady shit and whether or not they were paying the coach or trying to pay the coach $100,000 to lose, with everything they got going on. If they actually somehow manipulated the independent neurologist to say that Tua didn't have a concussion on Sunday and got him back in that game so he could play football again in week 3 of the NFL season, if they did that, like, that is one of the most asshole moves in the history of any business ever. Just in the face of the NFL, with their tampering charge they just had, with the trying to lose scandal they just had, with everything that's gone on with the Miami Dolphins, okay, and the ownership. If they did that, it'd be like, that is a move that I didn't know a human could pull off. And I didn't know McDaniel would be a human that would be a part of that, because it sounds like everything that we've gotten to meet with McDaniel live in our studio and from what we've heard, it's like everybody loves this guy. You know what? Because he cares. Like he seems to genuinely care about his players. How do you make it? So I understand how everybody and why everybody's reacting the way they are, but I think the process for that to actually happen, which is what we were chatting about all week, is like a pretty big, like egregious thing that would have to happen in a very quick amount of time. And the NFL knows, and Miami Dolphins know, that the investigation would lead and find that to be the case. So I just didn't want, I think you're saying some really terrible things about people like McDaniel, the Miami Dolphins medical staff, and it might all be very true. It might all be very, very true. But I just think immediately assuming that that's what they did because of how scary last night was, which is not great at all, I think is a dangerous thing. I think it's a very serious allegation that people are saying. I think it's much more serious than people even imagine because of how much, you know, concussions have become full conversation in the NFL with the fines and the lobbies and suspensions and careers that could be altered from that type of thing. Like it is, I understand why. I'm just thinking it's a very aggressive thing to automatically assume that has happened. And I know fans who care about Tua have that reaction. I respect the fans, but like the people that were in the NFL, and I guess they might think that Tua is getting forced to play more from their experience or whatever. But I just think a lot of people have immediately just said, oh, they fucked them over. They did this. It's like, that's a very serious allegation, I think, and who knows? I guess we'll find out if that happened or not, but that's a serious allegation I think should be chatted about.
Well, that's the fact that you said, that could be true. They could have tried to manipulate the independent person, all that, but we definitely don't know that for sure right now. We definitely can't say that's the case. We can't say it was criminal when with the Dolphins. And also, I mentioned to Ty earlier, Pat, like McDaniel, I don't think any head coach in the NFL would have the power to override an independent doctor if the doctor said, hey, this guy's out, he's down, he's out, can't play today, failed protocol, didn't even pass the first step of the protocol. Yeah, Doc, appreciate your time, but it's just an opinion you give me. He's playing in the game. Like, that doesn't happen. I don't think a head coach can override any even the team doctor of the head coach have a hard time overriding, I feel like.
Yeah, and obviously the coach is a part of the decision, and maybe the coach, and this is what I think is a valid argument, like with what happened to Tua's back just 4 days ago, where his body locked up, maybe you say Thursday too quick. You should not be playing, let alone even if you don't know if it's a concussion, like maybe McDaniel looks out for Tua, and I think that is a valid argument where you're like, if it was his back, there's a good chance he's going to take another hit to his back in this particular game against the Bengals, especially with Hendrickson having the stats in the year that he's having, let's assume at some point. So I think that's a very valid argument, honestly. Like McDaniel may be saying it's a Thursday, you got hurt pretty severely on a Sunday, let's rest you for a week and then play you the next week. I think that's the case. But the immediate assumption that like numerous levels of people, including independent doctors that have been hired by the NFL and the NFLPA in each city, just immediately said, hey, how many fingers am I holding up? How many fingers am I holding up? How many fingers? 2? Yep. Right. Okay, good. Get back in there. Like, I think we're in a different time. I hope we're in a different time, and we might just be too naive, AJ, which is what a lot of people were telling me last night as we had this conversation.
Hey, I was thinking that this morning driving here. I was like, maybe I am just naive to all of it to where I'm not thinking like these people, but I guess maybe I am naive. I just don't think at that level. I don't think you can get multiple people to sign off on something like this that would affect somebody that much and be such a public thing too. Like, it's like conspiracies. A lot of conspiracies people want to think. They think like 200 people are in on something and none of them tell
200.
Yeah. Well, okay. How many? I'm saying that's a low number, is what I'm saying.
I've heard some conspiracies from some people where it would have to involve tens of thousands of people not saying anything to anybody. And I'm like, are these humans?
You can't get 5 people. You can't get 5 people to shut up.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation if it's humans or not. It's like, okay, well, how many people know that? And they're like thousands. I'm like, oh, okay. So you're telling me that thousands of people can keep their mouth shut, not tell anybody? And they're like, well, if they open their mouth, they're dead. It's like, okay, tens of thousands of people just take something. You're right, though. I just think we might be too naive, and we apologize for that. And it does feel like everybody is just under the assumption that the NFL and the medical is just complete malpractice. It feels like a lot of people.
They do, right? What is it like? Would we feel the same way if it was another sport that we weren't in, we didn't get to see like the actual humans involved? Like, would we be doing the same thing?
I don't know. And then I'm also like starting to think, are we just too new to the game? Like, I feel like if I was to allege what is being alleged, like I would feel like, I don't know if I should do that on TV. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I should do that with a lot of people watching it because these are big allegations. This is like when somebody gets on TV and like, this guy needs to be fired. It's like, that's pretty fucked up just to like wish for a family to have to move and be fired. Now, you can paint a picture on why person should be fired, but like outright calling for people who aren't despicable human beings, I'm just talking about from their performance, to be fired. I think like there's a little bit of a, expectation whenever you're speaking into a mic. So all these allegations that are taking place are very serious. Very serious. So I'm happy that Alan Sills is saying something,
Like a lot of people would be on the hook for this. Like you guys mentioned it. Not only like McDaniels and the Dolphins staff, the independence person, the NFL protocols, like even Dr. Alan Sills now. Like wouldn't he?
I mean, guys would
be
lose
on the hook?
They wouldn't be able to practice anymore, would they? If you legit pushed Tua through the protocol, there's no way that you would be able to continue to practice as a doctor.
Listen, if they did though, we're on your side.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
If all that, I would just like that to be stated, because there's going to be people that hear what we say and go, "Oh, let's see these guys being a mouthpiece for the NFL." It's like, excuse me, that's not the case. We bury a lot of shit around the NFL, and you can thank us for why the refs are better. Actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of that type of stuff, but this particular thing, if what everybody is alleging happened, we are disgusted. Like, we are absolutely disgusted. That's not good. That's terrible. The NFL needs to make a lot of changes if that's happening, because the brain is supposed to be the most important part. Dr. Will Smith, with Total Truth, obviously, he changed the entire game. So it's just for every player's purpose, and we're a big-time pro players show. I think we're maybe the most pro player show in the history of shows. It's just like, it's hard for me to believe that somebody just blatantly.
And it's not it wouldn't be a secret deal where they could do it behind the scenes, like, oh, this happened in practice and nobody knows about it. No, this was on the national stage for everybody to see. If we throw this guy back out there, we have to understand the consequences if we're wrong here. And they did, I would imagine.
AJ.
Yeah.
Hindsight, McDaniel should have started Teddy Bridgewater. 4 days. Probably. Not enough time after that scary of a back injury.
I guess, but is that a coach? When have we ever seen a coach do anything like that, let alone a coach going into his third NFL game as a head coach or fourth game?
I think it happened with luck. You're going to have to ask Chuck. I think it happened with luck. I think there was a game or two where it was, we didn't all know the severity, and I think Andrew was trying to play through. I think you're going to have to ask Chuck about that next week, but I think it has taken place, especially like week 3, week 4. You know, that's very early.
Yeah,
it's very early.
You're right with hindsight. Man. You're right with hindsight. Of course, it's easy to sit there. If you're the head coach, I should have stepped in maybe and done this because of what happened. If Tua goes through that game and that never happens, though, and we don't have any of this conversation, are people still up in arms that he was playing?
Well, that also goes back to your point, Pat. Like, it'd be one thing if there was a conversation around it, like, he probably shouldn't have played. You know, I don't know if they kind of pushed him to get back out there, but that wasn't the sentiment this morning. Everyone was just, hey, this is done deal, set in stone. There was an issue. He was concussed, and they put him out there and had him play. Like, there was no conversation about whether or not maybe he shouldn't have been out there. It was just, he shouldn't have been out there. The NFL's on the line. The Dolphins are on the line. McDaniel's on the line. Man. And that's what the issue is.
Yeah, that's the NFL, the biggest show in town. You get 17.1 million average viewers. Yep. Everything you do is going to be talked about, and we hope the investigation will actually be transparent, just like they probably should have been on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday when a lot of people were asking questions. They could have got ahead of this, you know? Yes. Could have maybe got ahead of this whole thing, but nobody could have expected what sad situation that happened last night to took place.